Fantasy Footballers Podcast with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Good morning, everyone. We are back. The Fantasy Footballers are back. Mike is wearing a DuckTales t-shirt.
You're darn right I am. We had a conversation on the Patreon Mailbag show about great cartoon theme songs.
And that made you break it out, or did you go buy it?
Well, I was at the Target. And they had a DuckTales shirt, and I said,
well,
yes, I will.
What you said.
Yeah, that was what I said. That is accurate.
I like it.
That's
I
more
like
accurate.
it. Welcome to the show. It is Tuesday, March 22nd, 2016, and kickoff is next week, or so it seems in my brain. No, lots happening, lots of news. We have a very fun show today. We have an election special because there's nothing you want more in your life than more political talk about football.
Oh, yes.
Say today it's not the fantasy football.
No, this is not
the political ballers.
The political ballers. Okay, we'll get him some medicine. No, you don't have to browse your Facebook feed for all your friends posting weird political reposts. But today we have our own spin on it. We said, look, who better to run this country than the Foot Clan? Doesn't that make perfect sense?
Yeah, I think our listeners are the best, and they know who the best are.
So we're going to...
we have the best words.
We have the very best words. Well, I can see you're really learning from the candidates. So what we wanted to do is we're doing an election special. We're involving you, and we're basically going to put some candidates up for some political offices that we've invented for them. Well, real offices, but we're doing this in the spirit of fantasy football. And so we're going to each argue for a candidate in a number of categories. All these categories are about 2016, the upcoming year. So in a way, this is some bold predictions that we're making. But you get to vote on Twitter at the FF Ballers. You cast your vote for each of these 5 offices.
We're taking it to the streets.
Yeah, and we'll see who you believe are the worthy candidates.
Presidential nomination, vice president, and candidate and cabinet.
Yeah, we're gonna elect
for
some cabinet
fantasy
members.
football in 2016.
So it'll be fun. We've got news, like I said, and then we're gonna get into the mailbag a little bit, answer some listener questions, and we appreciate all the questions that come in. We answer as many as we can on Twitter. Like I said, at the FF Ballers is where you can go vote. You can also ask us questions on there. You can go to the website, thefantasyfootballers.com, submit questions for the show there, and we have a voicemail line that I'll give you, 302-464-TFFB, and so you can call and leave us a voicemail question on there as well. And if you want to get involved with our community, you can do that on jointhefoot.com. We got an extra episode every week on there as well. So quick question for the day, guys, and this is timely. We had a different quick question, but this one Mike brought up. So go ahead, Mike.
I changed the question up, and I said we'll talk for this future year here, because one of my friends, it's definitely not me,
right,
is looking at a keeper decision of who to throw in. Alfred Morris, the newly signed Dallas Cowboy, yeehaw! Alfred Morris.
Yeah.
Or the sophomore disappointment that was Jeremy Hill. Alfred Morris or Jeremy Hill, who you looking at for next year?
Alfred Morris going to the Cowboys? Well, I'll answer the
first. It could not be better.
No, that's the best location for Alf. I think it could have been better for the Cowboys.
Sure.
So I'll answer the first half of the question, and then I'll toss it over to Andy for the second half. You have 2 very, very similar style players. I think Jeremy Hill is capable of catching the ball, whereas Alf is not. But regardless, their teams don't use them in that role. You've got a first and second down, touchdown goal line type of back that's going to get the work, both with good team. And so what I think it comes down to is the team. Pick the guy on the better team. And that is where I can't decide between the Cowboys and the Bengals. So Andy,
that's the second half of the
that's
question.
The second half of the question.
It's a no, I can see that.
I answer your question with my own question.
The reality is as of today, both guys are going to be in timeshares. Gio Bernard, Lance Dunbar, Darren McFadden. McFadden had a surprisingly efficient year.
Yes.
My worry with Alf is that everything looks rosy in Dallas for him, but he doesn't perform at a very high level earlier in the year, and then you have a situation where, that's the risk reward with Alf potentially. You have a great offensive line. You have Romo coming back. You got Dez. He's not going to face 8 in the box probably with Romo and Dez back. But then you have the risk of, okay, is the tread wearing off the tires? Is he just, like Jason said, there's no way McFadden and Dunbar don't take third down work. There's no way that Gio doesn't take that work, most likely in Cincinnati. But I actually lean Jeremy Hill myself. Yeah,
that's where I'm leaning right now. The other wrench that I'll throw into this is the question of Hugh Jackson, the OC, former OC from the Bengals, is gone. Will there be any kind of shift in their offensive mentality in Cincinnati, where they were a running team? Will that change at all? Where in Dallas, I still believe that they're a running team, even though they have all these. They have Romo, they have Dez, they have this flashy offense. They're still at their heart they want to pound the ball type of a team. So that's where I'm a little hesitant to lean. And
we
and
can
Dallas,
all hope that you make the wrong choice.
Dallas
for our sake in the
can
league
still very much make this decision easy, and they take Easy E Ezekiel Elliott at number 4, which would make it an automatic Jeremy Hill.
I agree with that. And by the way, I meant hopefully your friend makes the wrong decision.
Oh yes, I'll tell them.
All right, before we get into the rest of the news and notes, I do want to take a second. We from time to time like to read reviews from our listeners. Leaving us a review on iTunes is one of the best ways you can support our show, and so we're going to do that right now.
Review-a-saurus Rex.
This one comes in from Kyle J11. He says, entertainment in every episode. I started listening to the Footballers this past year, and I enjoy every single episode. 2 exclamation points. Great content, great flow, and the perfect amount of comedy sprinkled in. I unfortunately couldn't bring home a #FootClan title this year. I'm listening weekly and building up to bring one home next year. Keep up the great work, and thanks for all you do. Hey, you know what, Kyle J11, thank you for the review. We thank everybody for the reviews, and don't feel bad about not getting a #FootClan title this year. Andy and Mike couldn't bring it home either. Oh.
Ouch.
What? That was so uncalled for.
Well,
and well done.
I was going to say, it's the type of thing I would have done.
I would have done it
and
too.
have done for the past 10 years with Jason until, no. All right, let's get into the news.
News and notes from around the league.
Just doesn't feel good. Can't let him win again, Mike. It's too dangerous to our health.
It won't happen.
All right, hey guys, I'm a little worried about this first bit of news here. The NFL has come out and said there's no requirement on getting back to the Browns about the Josh Gordon reinstatement. That is a little bit of a concern to me. The actual quote said there's no requirement that a reinstatement decision be made in 60 days.
It's so weird.
I am worried only because of we've seen some of this happen with other people. Darrell Washington in Arizona, I think, applied for reinstatement about a year ago.
Has heard nothing.
Has heard nothing from the league. Now, that often means there are repeat offenses going on behind the scenes, and or he hasn't complied with what the league required from them and those type of things. I would still expect Josh Gordon back, but the Browns are planning as though he would not be here for the next
What
year.
does he got to do? I mean, we're not there, so we don't have all the information, but at least forward face and publicly, it seems like Josh Gordon he's saying all the right things, he's making all the right moves, and
he's got to say no to drugs.
Yeah, well, of course, because winners don't use drugs. But that's
right.
He's doing everything that, at least publicly, that he possibly can. What else does the guy have to do? If you're the NFL and you have this guy who is he's had the trouble. He's working through it, going through all the steps and the stages that you want him to go through. Do you not want that part of your story? Yeah. Is we got this guy.
But you also don't want to make a mistake and reinstate somebody who isn't, I think it's a due diligence thing. He's been multiple offender, so you have a longer due diligence period now after reinstatement to make sure that he's still, that would be my assumption. That would be my hope, is that the delay is based on feeling out his, what he's doing. Yeah, is he following all the rules? Is he doing everything correctly?
From a fantasy football perspective, you have to now think that it's not an automatic that he's back. So if, there are some people that are saying, hey, I've got to make my keeper selection now. I dealt with a question yesterday where I wanted to go Josh Gordon. He was in the 16th round, but he had to make the decision now. Or he had someone, I think it was like Jordy in the 3rd, and I would have rather take Josh Gordon, but I'm not going to currently. If I have to make this decision now, I want a player I know is going to be on my roster. Hopefully you can wait till after he's reinstated and then have Josh Gordon officially on your team. But if you have to make the decision now, I'm shying away.
All right, there's talk from Jason Lockenfora of CBS that, it's looking like Robert Griffin III will likely be a Cleveland Brown.
It's interesting. It's interesting for sure.
So speaking of Josh Gordon, this could be the guy throwing him the ball.
In Gordon and Griffin were teammates, if I do recall correctly. Is that accurate? I sure hope it is, because I'm throwing it out there. But it's the Browns. I mean, you lost Travis Benjamin. I'm getting the head nod. I was right. I did remember that correctly.
Yeah, they both went to Baylor.
The reason I remember that is because Griffin was going out of his way to tell Washington, hey, Gordon's in this supplemental draft. We got to pick him up. But then, of course, the Browns took him. So it's if you get Gordon and Griffin there, that's very interesting to me. I know the playbook and everything's going to be different, but at least you have that natural chemistry between the two players of he kind of already knows some of Gordon's tendencies. So I would love that.
No, it's an interesting twist to it. Now you're still facing an uphill battle with that offense and being efficient enough. I mean, I don't think you're considering RG3 as a quarterback candidate in fantasy as much as you are kind of maybe projecting Gordon in a good fashion.
Yes.
So, but if RG3 can run the ball, then he becomes relevant again. So the Redskins seem confident that Matt Jones will be their lead back. How confident are you guys in Matt Jones as their lead back?
Man, those fumbles are scary. I think we have to wait till after the draft to see what their words say. I mean, there's so much misinformation before the draft. When they come out and say, we're really confident, this is our guy, that's them saying, hey, everybody, we're not taking a running back, so you can go ahead and, if you're right before us, don't worry about taking him. So
you're right.
Just too early to see.
Why do they sound like Jerry Seinfeld?
I don't know. And so for me, I would say too early to tell if he is the lead guy. I like him because of opportunity and talent, but I'm not convinced that he is fully capable of being the guy. I loved some of the stuff I saw last year, but if a guy's fumbling as often as he was, you can't have him be a lead back for a whole year. You're going to lose all your games.
All right, the Rams have once again come out and said that Case Keenum will be their starting quarterback.
8-8. That's the champion call coming out of the Rams. Ooh, the brass. What are they doing?
I don't know.
What are they doing?
First-round tender on Keenum. They seem committed to him.
They're fishing.
And then I saw
fishing.
I saw a quote of I think it was from Fisher. It said, we can win games with Case. I know this, but we're also going to give Nick a chance. So you have no quarterbacks on your team.
That's the kind of confidence
Keenum and
you
Foles.
have in a great quarterback, as you always say, you give the other guys a chance on
Keenum
on
and
the team.
Foles.
I'm not fully convinced. I know Jeff Fisher has a knack for 8-8, which is very impressive.
It's not just a knack.
I'm not convinced he can get 8 wins this year.
This means
8-8 is the goal, Jason. That's never the. We don't want.
It's not the standard.
10-6. No. 8-8. That's what we want.
We could do it this year.
We also want to make sure all wide receivers in St. Louis remain irrelevant to fantasy football owners. All right, the Raiders GM Reggie McKenzie said he will get some help in the backfield. The Raiders seem very committed to not giving Latavius Murray the amount of carries he had last year, which was 266 carries.
We're all looking at
why won't they, Jason?
They
With
won't.
a guy so
Look, Latavius Murray is extremely talented, but you did see peaks and valleys last year with his production. I think that it's good to get another guy in there. If they go out and draft Eazy-E, this is very bad for Latavius Murray. It's a guy that supplants Latavius Murray, and now Latavius Murray is the help for Eazy-E. But if they go out and get a guy in the 3rd, 4th round, 5th round, then I like that for Latavius. Latavius is clearly going to be the starter if they were to bring someone in that is not Ezekiel Elliott or Derrick Henry. That means he's their guy, but he can get some rest. I mean, he had no opportunity last year to have any rest whatsoever. Our boy Roy Halou.
Oh, Halou.
Goodbye. Goodbye. He was nowhere to be found. He was injured most of the year. And so I think Murray broke down at times, and he's got the talent where if he can get a little bit of rest, but the majority of the workload, where he will be RB2 at the worst.
Sure. And our last piece of news is Chiefs linebacker Justin Houston will be sidelined 6 to 12 months after a knee scope dealing with an issue with his ACL. Massive blow to the Kansas City Chiefs if Houston is not on the team this year.
Yeah, he's their premier pass rusher.
Whew.
He had recurring injuries at the end of the year. It's just an unfortunate thing if he is going to miss that much time.
He's
certainly going to miss some.
He's one of those guys where when we talk about it's kind of hard to gauge a defense because one single player missing completely changes.
He's their Von Miller or their J.J. Watt. He's their best pass rusher. It puts so much pressure on them. And, Tamba Ali's back, but he's older. So
a guy like that is going to make your safeties better, your cornerbacks better.
Makes the entire defense better.
Yeah.
Just him.
Guys, it's almost election time. It is almost election time. But before we get to that, I want to thank our good friends, the sponsor of this show, PristineAuction.com. You've heard us talk about them before. It's where we got our beautiful signed David Johnson jersey that hangs next to
the beautiful man,
Mike the Bearded. But it is absolutely fabulous. We love it. Mike has single-handedly redecorated his man cave at his house with a number of amazing sports memorabilia pieces, autographs, and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
At Pristine Auction.
Absolutely. I have a stretched canvas of David Johnson from the Eagles game, hand-signed. He wrote out his stat line. It is the best-looking piece in my office. I love it. It's tremendous.
Yeah, and we want to let you know that PristineAuction.com has daily auctions, literally hundreds of daily auctions that end every single night. So it's really fun to go on there, see if you find something that you like. They have weekly auctions. Right now they have I saw this morning, a Peyton Manning full-size signed Super Bowl 50 champs helmet sitting on there. So we've been kind of in the market for a helmet, so that's got to be thrown into consideration there. And the nice thing about Pristine Auction is the authenticity. They guarantee the authenticity of every item on there. They come with the authentication form only from the most trusted sources, and everything on there is very affordable. There are a lot of very cool pieces. You can show your fan support for your team by grabbing some of the awesome gear that is on there. So check them out, PristineAuction.com. All right, guys, it's time to represent the candidates.
Whew.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
All right, like I said, we are going to each represent a candidate for a number of offices, and then we are going to post all of these on Twitter at the FF Ballers. Go cast your vote, make your mark on this fantasy football democracy.
On history.
On history. So, do we start? We start at the top.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, we're starting with the president of the 2016 fantasy season. This would be essentially the MVP of the year, our projection. Who do we believe will be the most valuable player? And I will add this caveat. The most valuable player is not always the first pick in the draft. It is also the player that will make the biggest mark from where they're at, kind of the player that can win you your league if you select that player. And if you select...
He's pointing to me. I'm going with Eddie Lacy.
Oh, gross.
My big old fat pants
Sorry.
Eddie Lacy.
Go ahead and make
I
your
am
case for
saying
Eddie on stage here.
that he will be the president next year and the fantasy MVP because
How big are his hands?
they're big enough to carry many touchdowns for your fantasy team last year. So last year he was a consensus top 2 pick. He was usually going at the first or second pick of the draft. So everybody hates Eddie Lacy, and that is why this year he is a great value. I see him average draft positions at the very back of the second, sometimes into the third round. I didn't even believe that when I saw it, so I went and did some mock drafts, and sure enough, there at the last pick of the second round, when I was at the turn, I got Eddie Lacy, and that is incredible because in 2014, the year beforehand, he had over 1,500 all-purpose yards, over 40 receptions, and 13 touchdowns. He's a beast. The problem is, last year,
he's a beast.
He was a big beast.
Bell cow.
Keyword. Yes, he was certainly a very large bell cow, and he came in out of shape. He couldn't get on the field. There were complaints from him from training camp, from the first week, all through the season. You could see it when you watched film. He did not look like the Eddie Lacy of old. He looked like two of them. And here's what they did in free agency. They toyed around with Matt Forte. They didn't pick up Matt Forte. They actually re-signed James Starks, who's been there for the last several years and is clearly the backup. They even, when Fat Eddie got too fat, they gave him the chance to take over that role, and James Starks showed the world that he can't really do that. So Eddie Lacy is the guy. I like what they didn't do in free agency for him. I like his draft position. You're going to be able to draft, for my draft, when I'm at the number one spot, if I can get Antonio Brown with that first spot and then wrap around to the turn and grab Eddie Lacy, who I think is worthy, is going to have as good a season as any other running back, he will be the type that will win you years this year.
Let me say this. Do you want another year like the one you just had with Eddie Lacy? He's the establishment's pick, and he's not my pick. I'm going with Todd Gurley. You need new blood as your fantasy MVP. I don't care if he's going in the top 5. That's where he belongs. All he did with Case Keenum, their, quote, starting quarterback, was a pace of over 300 touches and 20 touchdowns with Case Keenum under center. He is a powerhouse running back, a young running back, in a world of uncertainty at the running back position. Do I want to dance with Fat Eddie? No, I don't want to dance with Fat Eddie. I don't want to risk another year like that. He had opportunity after opportunity under McCarthy. There were disappointments, not just on the field, but in the work ethic. Just because we think he might be back in shape doesn't mean he will be. And so I'm standing on the solid ground of Todd Gurley.
Listen, America. I've heard what my fellow candidates have said here, but I would like to elect a man named Mark Ingram, running back from the New Orleans Saints. Here's the thing with Mark Ingram. He only played 12 games last year, over 160 carries, nearly 800 yards. Here's the big thing for Mark Ingram, 60 targets in that time, 50 catches, over 400 yards. From week 1 to 10, he was the number 3 running back. He only played 12 games, like I said formerly. Do you know how he finished in PPR? He was still a running back 1. In standard, he was the running back 15. You give him his average per game, he becomes the number 3 overall running back. What happened when Mark Ingram went down? They brought a castaway named Tim Hightower, who put up 70 points in 3 weeks. You think Tim Hightower's seen the field when Mark Ingram is there? No, those 70 points are going to Mark Ingram, who will be dominant. And just like I like what Jason said about the value, because Mark Ingram right now, you will get him at the back of the second round. I can get a superstar wide receiver or even a Le'Veon Bell, an Odell Beckham. I can pair them with Mark Ingram. Like I said, weeks 1 through 10, the number 3 running back.
Not bad. I don't mind that pick. I don't mind him as a candidate. Maybe next year. All right, let's move on to the vice president of the 2016 fantasy season. And we are defining the vice president as a player that will become elite for the first time. They've never been the MVP, but they will be elite this year and be ready to step into the presidency if needed. All right? So let's go ahead and let Mike start this one off.
Oh, back to back.
Who is your candidate for the vice president of the 2016 season? Who's going to be elite for the first time?
My candidate is Amari Cooper, wide receiver for the Oakland Raiders. Last year, 130 targets. His rookie season, 130 targets, 72 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Now, this comes off. He had a very debilitating foot injury that limited his end of the season, the last 25% of the season. In 3 of those final 4 games, he had 4 catches for 30 yards, and he still finished with over 1,000 yards. In the middle of there, he did have a beast game against Green Bay, 6 catches, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now, here's the deal. Who's getting him the ball? Derek Carr. In 26 less attempts last year, he upped his completions. Thank you for being there for me. So 26 less attempts, had over 700 more yards, plus 11 touchdowns. According to Football Outsiders, they had the 4th best passing offensive line. I love Amari Cooper to finish an entire year and break out and be elite.
I'll tell you what. Let me just follow up Amari, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'll let you. That way you get the last word in this one. I'm going to follow up Amari because I was approaching that campaign to join it when I saw Mike had already been hired. So I really don't mind a vote for Amari Cooper. I think it's a well-placed vote. However, I am running the campaign for one Zachary Ertz. Zach Ertz came on strong last year, and he is a viable vice president candidate this year. Look, it doesn't take a long road for a tight end to go from just okay to an elite option. We saw Jordan Reed last year make the jump in the second half of the season. I don't think there's anybody doubting that Reed was in the elite category for your fantasy team. If you look at Zach Ertz from week 11 on, his pace was 100-plus receptions, 1,200-plus yards, and 5 touchdowns. Now, touchdowns have been the problem for Ertz, but it seems like one of those things that is a little bit of an anomaly. He's in a West Coast offense now. But look at this. Here's the number I love about it. In that time period, he averaged 9 targets a game. I mean, just give me an athletic tight end that averages 9 targets a game, who's been paid. I like Zach Ertz. I think he's a great candidate.
Yeah, I do like that they just showed him the money. Then that's the new coaching staff coming in saying that we are committed to you, Mr. Ertz.
Now, Jason, it's up to you, and don't drop the ball.
All right. Well, here's the
Speaking
truth.
of dropping the ball.
Here's what's going to happen for the vice presidential nomination. I respect Amari Cooper. I like Cooper's camp and Cooper's team. The problem that I have with your candidate is that they're on a team that wants to improve the running game and be a little bit less pass happy that they were forced into last year. Whereas the candidate that I've got for vice president to take a step forward to the number 1, to be the real MVP, an elite player for the first time, you might think, wait, isn't he already elite? Because that's how it feels. He's that good. But let me ask you a question before I get to this, Mike. Who was your breakout candidate at the quarterback position?
That would be Jameis Winston.
Oh, famous Jameis Winston. There are so many reasons to love him.
It's
And
a
the number
trap
one
over
reason is, with the support of Mike, is Mike Evans.
You voted for him already.
Mike Evans is next year's fantasy MVP. You know where you can draft him? Several spots behind Amari Cooper, despite the fact that Amari Cooper had a worse season than Mike Evans. I don't blame him there. He was a rookie. But you know who else was a rookie? Jameis Winston, the quarterback for Mike Evans. Now you have a year of rapport between Jameis and Jameis Winston and Mike Evans. Dirk Cutter, the offensive coordinator last year, who was responsible for that, is now the head coach and wants to get him involved. The third year for wide receivers is famously a leap year for their production. So you have Mike Evans here, who you can get at a good spot, who's going to have a year of rapport with his up and improving quarterback in a more offensive team. Mike Evans is going to be the vice president this year with your vote at the FF
All right,
Ballers.
so I should have summarized the candidates on the previous one. The presidential candidates were Todd Gurley, Eddie Lacy, and Mark Ingram. The vice presidential candidates were Zach Ertz, Mike Evans, and Amari Cooper. So you'll want to cast your vote. We're going to move on now to the Department of Justice. We need justice, my friend. We need an attorney general in place here. someone to bring justice for their name. This is the bounce back player of the year. Somebody who is going to come and reclaim what was once there. I'm going to kick this one off.
Please do.
With my candidate. And it took a lot of time for me to really see the issues that were important and where my candidate stood on them. And I was confident in Andrew Luck to be that player, that bounce back candidate. We know the story of the lacerated kidney. You've all heard it. It almost unseated him from his great throne. However, he also struggled with completion percentage and interceptions. I'm not hiding from those facts. It's more about what a candidate does with a tumultuous time. And we've actually seen many Hall of Fame level quarterbacks have years where they saw a little bit of a dip and bounced back very easily. We saw Drew Brees had a year where his completion percentage dropped 8% and it went back to the mean. We saw a year where Joe Montana had a year where he went 11% down in the middle of his career and returned to the mean. I don't expect Andrew Luck to be any different than that career trajectory. He's too darn good. He had 60-plus percentage completion years the 2 years prior, and last year he struggled not just with the kidney but with the shoulder and the arm, and they're ready to show him the money. Andrew Luck is just too good. He's going to bounce back. He's going to bring justice to his name. He's my candidate for Attorney General.
Yeah, well, Andrew Luck, he was drafted with the number 1 spot in the NFL draft for a reason, and he is a great potential bounce back candidate. The problem that I have there
I see he's taking a very
is that he was having a very poor season beforehand, and there isn't the longevity of record of his voting history, if you will, on the field. And so I'm going to go with a guy who has been a tried and true star, one of the best running backs of our generation, who was besmirched with an ACL injury.
Now, he's on the IR party? Is that the...
Yes, he's on the IR party. And last time that he won the ticket from an IR party, he came back hot as a number 1 running back. Jamaal Charles will be back. His yards per carry are absolutely incredible. They are like no running back in the modern era right now, even including Adrian Peterson. Nobody is more efficient with the ball than Jamaal Charles, who at his worst yards per carry in his career, his illustrious career, was 5. That's like the magic number that you try to get if you're a great running back. Last year, I think we had, two or three players get to 5 yards a carry. That's his worst season ever, and he's even done that coming off an ACL injury. So you want to talk about a bounce back that you can be sure of, that you could put your stock in. It's Jamaal Charles. Cast your vote today.
I don't have a problem with nominee over here, Mr. Jamaal Charles. A slight problem, I guess. That's 2 ACL tears. So that's why I'm going to put my faith and my trust in Carlos Hyde. You've heard me talk about this name before. Carlos, maybe he's not a typical bounce-back candidate, as he has not produced at an elite high level yet.
Excellent point.
Mm-hmm. However, Carlos Hyde, let me start this with a question for you guys. Is it easier or harder to run a football in the NFL when there are 4 DBs on the field, so 3 linebackers, or 2 linebackers? Which would be easier?
No comment.
This is a trap question.
I'll answer it for you. 2 linebackers would be much easier to run on, also known as a nickel defense. Here's the deal with Carlos Hyde last year. He faced the base defense on 83% of his carries. He still managed to 4.2 yards per carry. According to Player Profiler, they calculate something they call the juke rate. They take evaded tackles, so just straight up talent at the running back. Evaded tackles divided by touches, 33%. So on 33% of the time when Carlos Hyde is touching the ball, he is causing a missed tackle. Let me ask you a question about other running backs last year. Not so much a question. I'll just give you some facts. These are the running backs that face the highest percentage of nickel and dime defenses on carries. Top 4. Darren Sproles, Ryan Matthews, Danny Woodhead, DeMarco Murray. Do you see a trend with any of those running backs? Because 3 of them were on the same offense that is run by Chip Kelly, who is now the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, where Carlos Hyde resides and runs the ball. Not only that, you think, well, maybe they don't run the ball that much. Chip Kelly's offenses, in the 3 years he was in Philadelphia, averaged the 7th most attempts in the league. They have volume. They have sustainability. They only faced a base defense on 18% of runs. The opportunity is there for Hyde to run against the nickel. In 2 years, Carlos Hyde has averaged the magic number that you just spoke of, 5.1 yards per carry against the nickel defense. So I put forth my candidate, Carlos Hyde, who you can get in the 4th round.
Yeah, and maybe he'll bounce back to RB. What's his highest RB? It's like he wasn't even born in this country, Mike.
All right.
We need a birth
The
certificate.
candidates, Andrew Luck, Jamaal Charles, Carlos Hyde, for the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, the bounce back player of the year. Go cast your vote. All right, we're moving on. We're moving on to the Department of the Treasury. We need a Treasury Secretary. We need the best ADP value in 2016. Who wants to get this one started?
Oh, I'll get this started with your future Department of Treasury winner, which is
He doesn't even know the office. It's the Treasury Secretary.
The
I wrote it
Treasury
in your-
Secretary.
I wrote it in your notes.
Look, I don't need to know that it's the Treasury Secretary to know who is the best value at ADP, and I got a need.
Ooh.
And it's a need.
Ooh.
For Snead. Listen, this is gonna be a landslide. The polls are already showing that Willie Snead is the clear victor, and here's why: because he gets no respect. He is being drafted in the 11th round. The 11th round in standard and the back of the 10th, so pretty much the 11th in PPR.
He won't be.
No, he absolutely will be. I took a look at the guys going ahead of him. They have much more pub, like Brashad Perriman. Oh, he was touted coming in last year. Stefan Diggs, he had a great run, and Travis Benjamin switched teams. Don't draft any of those guys over Willie Snead. Here's what Willie Snead did in his rookie year, coming in as an unheralded guy. He put up 69 catches for 984 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he missed a game last year. If you take those 15 and just make it 16, he would have had 1,049 yards. So he missed that 1,000-yard mark in his rookie unheralded season by 16 yards? In 15 games. And just to give a frame of reference for how good that is, in the history of the post-merger NFL, there have only been 16 rookies ever to eclipse 1,000 yards, and almost every single one of those guys in their career, looking back, are legendary players. If not Hall of Fame, certainly team inductees into their Ring of Honor or whatever. That's what Willie Snead did. He has Drew Brees as his quarterback coming into year 2. And you can grab him in the 11th. This is a guy who should be a solid lock and loaded wide receiver 2 next year that you can grab at the end of the draft. You're not going to find a better value than that. Willie Snead for the treasurer.
I like that. I like Willie Snead. I especially like the comment about rookies with over 1,000 yards, because that sure sounds like a vote for my candidate, Amari Cooper, for breaking out and becoming elite.
Wait, didn't Mike Evans do it as well as rookie?
Maybe.
Oh, there you go.
Moving on. My value at this time, because I know that he will remain a value, Kamar Aiken of the Baltimore Ravens. I already have one of my opponents shaking their head at the name of Kamar Aiken, and here's what I will tell you he did last year. 127 targets, 75 receptions, almost 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns. You think, well, he stepped into the light when Steve Smith went down. Before Steve Smith went down, he already had 3 games of 75-plus reception yards. And let me ask you a question. Did that not make sense? He had 3 games.
No, I just never heard them referred to as reception yards, but continue.
Moving forward, let me ask you a possible trap question. Who had the most passing attempts in the NFL? Because it was the Baltimore Ravens.
Certainly not going to be that way next year.
Oh, no, certainly not, because Joe Flacco, we know he went down. He tore up his knee. Here's the deal. Joe Flacco was on pace for 660 attempts, which would have been 3rd in the NFL, because they were throwing the ball that much. And these weren't games where they were garbage time climbing from behind. The average margin of defeat in Joe Flacco games, 4.5 points. They were in close games. Steve Smith cannot recover from his Achilles injury. He is too old. Mike Wallace is old busted. Kamar Aiken is the new hotness.
Shenanigans.
Kamar Aiken is a value pick and a steal in this year's fantasy draft.
Baltimore, I'm just throwing this out there for the Foot Clan Lizard. Baltimore was blown out in almost every game they played for the first half of last year, and then they came back by throwing the ball a lot and made it a close victory and lost very close games all the time. But if you watch the actual game, I feel like not so much.
I will say that Kamar Aiken is the worst candidate that has been presented thus far.
That's why he will remain a value.
I contend that this is what we hate about politicians like Kamar Aiken, is that they're opportunistic. They take advantage of circumstances that were given to them for political gain, and you're not going to have no Forsett, no Steve Smith, no Mike Wallace, no Ben Watson, and no Joe Flacco next year. Kamar Aiken is a trap selection, and he will disappoint you in your elected office. But I'm going to move on to my guy.
In the 13th round.
You will drop him. You will drop him because you can find a Kamar Aiken candidate on the street corner. All right, Jonathan Stewart is my candidate for the Secretary of the Treasury because I think his ADP value is just plain too good. Right now he's going around the middle of the fourth. I don't know if that changes very much. He is a destined to drop in the minds of people, and I think that Jonathan Stewart is somebody who annoys people with his injury history, especially ending the year with 3 games on where he was kept out, and he probably could have played a little bit before that, but he didn't. In his 13 games, he was just under 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns, 242 carries, so that's a lot of carries. He's very, very valuable in your standard leagues, and guys like Anderson, Hyde, Yeldon, they're all going to go ahead of him, and they all probably shouldn't in my mind. I think Jonathan Stewart is a no excuses running back on a prolific offense, and there's no reason to think that that's going to change this year. So I think he is a great, great value, and that you should elect him today.
That's
all right,
fair.
so John
That's fair.
Stewart, Willie Snead, and Kamar Aiken will go. They'll be on your ballot. And so we're going to move on to one final spot, and this is the Department of Veteran Affairs.
Old Man Award.
We need to select the best veteran, the old man of 2016, somebody who is over the hill but not really, and should be serving on Capitol Hill.
Oh, that was well done.
All right, my
Well
candidate
done.
is Jason Witten.
Oh, man, I thought it was me.
Jason Witten. Look, it's incredible to me that this is a man who has played 76 games without Tony Romo in his career and 131 with him. But when Romo is there, Witten is always a value. And his pace with Romo in his career has been 84 receptions on the year, 936 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He can easily do that again this year. People who think that he is too old or dropped off are wrong. He had 77 receptions in a very tumultuous year last year. He gets Romo back. There's no reason Jason Witten can't be a great late round value at tight end. Just lock him in, tried and true. He's not going to give you those insane Jordan Reed 3 touchdown games. Don't get me wrong, but he's going to serve the people with consistent fantasy results every week.
All right, well, then I will take it with my guy who we were a little bit down on last year because we were worried about his reception total and we were worried about his age and all of these things. But you know what he did? He showed up and he said, no, I'm not too old. I am fantastic. And in the first half of last year.
Is that what he said?
Yeah, he did. He was the number 4
the best words.
running back. He was the number 4 running back. I'm talking about Matt Forte. Now, what happened was he got injured a little bit towards the end of last year, and then when he came back, found himself in a very big timeshare. So he missed 3 games, had some of the year, in a timeshare with Jeremy Langford, and he still finished with over 1,000 all-purpose yards, actually had a higher yards per carry than his previous year, and is not on a downward trajectory for his career. So what's he do? He goes and signs a brand new contract with a team that runs the ball more, runs the ball better, and the word around the Jets are that they view him as a 3-down back. Now, sure, they have Bilal Powell and they have Kyrie Robinson. Those things are going to keep Matt Forte fresh. Matt Forte will be a value. He is so talented as a runner,
Is he the
as
new
a
Frank
pass
Gore?
catcher. Well, I loved Frank Gore. That's exactly what he is. He is this year's Frank Gore. I was all about Frank Gore last year. Started slow, but actually Frank Gore finished as the number 12, an RB1 last year in fantasy football. So give me Matt Forte as the 12th running back finisher as an RB1 in his age 30 season for the Department of Veteran Affairs Secretary.
It's a compelling argument. Mike, why don't you close out this election season with your 8th round ADP selection?
I appreciate that. Let me say this, America. I am nominating Mr. Rashad Jennings, running back from the New York Giants. Look, we don't mince words in this camp. We don't pretend things didn't happen. It was a pretty rough year for Rashad Jennings up in New York. They were not dedicated and giving him the ball, giving him the touches. They had, at one point, a 4-headed monster at the running back position.
Isn't the 4-headed monster? Isn't that Peyton Manning? Oh, wait. Sorry.
Oh,
It took you both a
yeah.
second?
No, I needed you to touch your forehead to realize
okay.
I was, the
Yeah,
four-headed
sorry.
monster.
Sorry, that
here's-
was inappropriate for election season. We want to keep things really civil. All right, go on.
Here's how Rashad finished out the year in the last 4 games. So the last 25% of the season. 21.5 touches per game on the ground, 79 carries, 432 yards, 2 touchdowns. That is a 5.4 yards per carry clip. He was the number three fantasy running back over that time. He plays for the New York Giants, who were the 6th highest scoring offense in the league. And I believe that new head coach Ben McAdoo will McAdoo the right thing and get rid of Andre Williams and commit to Rashad Jennings, a running back, a starting running back that you can get currently in the 8th round because he has disrespected. I cannot guarantee he will not break down. As an old man, this is the one thing I cannot guarantee is that his health will maintain that pace for 16 games. But the value is there.
I'm going to respect that pick because you hit the desk so many times while saying it.
Has to be true.
I do want to ask, what is he going to do for for the taxes situation?
Oh, for well, he's up in New York, so
They're going up.
the taxes are going up. Yeah, I'm sorry.
All right. So the candidates for the Department of Veteran Affairs are Jason Witten, Matt Forte, and Rashad Jennings. Those will be on Twitter at the FF Ballers. You can vote for all 5 of the potential spots here in the government of the 2016 fantasy football season. So we are going to take a couple of minutes and hop into the mailbag.
Mailbag.
Vote for me!
Cheater. All right. So if you have a question, go to the website, thefantasyfootballers.com, click the submit a question button or dial 302-464-TFFB and leave us a voicemail question. I do want to take a quick moment and let you know what makes a good voicemail question. We cannot play a very long voicemail question. We can also not play a question where you call us and then talk to us for a little bit and then ask the question. It just doesn't work in terms of getting them on the air. So I just wanted to let people know that sometimes we get really good questions that have a lot of kind of fluff at the beginning and end of them, and we don't want to take up too much time.
We do appreciate and we hear them all.
We'd rather take up that amount of time by explaining voicemail questions to you. So, all right. So let me go ahead and jump in here. A voicemail question from BJ.
Hey guys, this is BJ in Hudson, Wisconsin. Calling about my keepers. Half-point PPR, 10 teams. We got to keep 4 of them for the round we drafted them in. Free agents are 10th rounder. I have 2 for sure. I'm keeping Les Bell in the 1st and Kelvin Benjamin in the 15th. One of my others was going to be Martavis Bryant. Lost him, so between these 4, I need 2 keepers. Got Travis Kelce in the 5th, Jonathan Stewart in the 6th, John Brown in the 8th, and Jeremy Langford in the 10th. I do have the 3rd pick overall because I finished 8th, despite going 6 and 8, so any help is appreciated. Thanks.
And he already has Lev Bell and Kelvin Benjamin on his team.
Yeah, I like those.
I think Stewart is a value in the 6th.
Yes, Stewart is a lock for me.
I think Langford's a value in the 10th as of today.
As of today, yes, Langford. I kind of went into Langford of I don't really like the talent, but the opportunity could very well be there. So if the Bears don't draft,
that's the thing. You want to wait till the draft if you can to make that decision. If it's permissible in your league,
yes,
that's the Langford tell to me.
Yeah, I agree completely. Those would be my 3 guys. If for some reason this is a 2 running back, 3 wide receiver league and there's no flex and you only have 2, then I like John Brown in the 8th over probably over Jay Stu in the 6th, and I'd take Langford. But
ooh, I love Stu in the 6th.
I like both.
What's up, fellas? This is Buddy, man. I love the podcast. Been listening since January. Every episode, y'all are great, man.
Nice.
And funny. Okay, my question is, I'm in an auction, 2 keeper league, $200 auction. Okay. To keep somebody out of free agency, you picked up is $20. To keep somebody for the first time, it's $15 on top of what you paid for them. And to keep somebody that you kept the previous year, it's $10. So these are my choices. I have Le'Veon Bell for $57. I have Jamaal Charles for $20. I have Brandon Marshall for $27. I have Keenan Allen for $35, and I have Julian Edelman for $32. I need to keep 2. Who do y'all think is the best 2 to keep with the price, knowing that the 2 I keep, the money will subtract from my $200? Thanks.
That's tough.
That's
man.
really good question because Lev Bell is very expensive compared to these guys.
Yeah. Lev Bell is worth that price in general, but he's not necessarily a value. You're getting, if this was a redraft league, Lev Bell's going to go for probably around $57 in a $200 auction league. To me, the lock is Jamaal Charles.
I completely agree.
Jamaal Charles at 20, he is, he is clearly the bounce back player of the year. Go vote for him at the FF Ballers. But between them, man, if you've already got Charles locked and loaded, I don't think I'm going to pony up for Lev Bell. And when you go between Brandon Marshall, Keenan Allen, and Edelman, 3 players I like, that's tough. That's tough. I think I would.
Okay. Well, so what is your take? Which 2 are you taking?
I'm going to go Jamaal Charles and Keenan Allen for $35.
I'm actually going to take Lev Bell and Jamaal Charles. I think Charles is the lowest price on the board here. He's the best value potential. And so I think it lets you move up and grab Bell for a fair price for Bell. And then you have if one of those 2 leads the league at the running back position, you're in great shape. I think you can find value at wide receiver. Marshall, his situation's up in there with Fitzpatrick right now. Keenan Allen certainly we believe is great. Coming off an injury, different offensive coordinator. And then Edelman's great too, but I just take Lev and Charles.
Yeah, I mean, if you add them up, you get $77 for the 2 guys, so you're spending under $40 each. That's how I will think about it because of the value you're getting with Charles is so extreme.
Mm-hmm.
So to get 2 RB1s under $40 each, that's a pretty solid deal. So I'm going to go that way.
I like it. Unlike in the election, you have won my vote here.
All right. These are a couple more questions here. This one's from @Miyagi Waxoff. Well, I shouldn't have read that one. In Omaha. I'm drafting an MFL 10 right now. Wide receivers are going off the board like crazy. 8 wide receivers in round 1. 7 in round 2. Question is, when a draft is going heavy in one position, do you try to get a player in that position before the good ones run out, or do you stick with the best player available?
There's 2 rules of thought here, right, when you have a run in any draft. This is why it's important to tier players, because what happens is if there's a run on a certain position and you're getting to the end of a tier, so let's say there's 5 wide receivers you really, really, really want, and 4 of them just went, and you can grab that 5th guy, the back guy of a tier, I like grabbing them then. But generally speaking, what this does is it provides great value to kind of playing the opposite role, and this means that there's going to be a lot of running backs that are very valuable there. So you can do it either way. What you don't want to do is you don't want to see a bunch of wide receivers going and then draft a wide receiver because you feel the need for him when he is not a good value when he's not in the tier you should be drafting at that spot. And just because others are gone, all you're going to end up with is a weak team.
Yeah, and the question of before the good ones run out, if you're getting to the end of a tier and you're sitting there on the board, then that is the time to take him, right?
Right.
So, all right, Jeff in Reno, he said, who are the players in the past few seasons that you would never pick up just because you had a feeling they would not pan out? For me, I would have never selected Joseph Randle last year in any round. I wanted no part of Arian Foster. I had no desire to have Peyton Manning. I know the stories, but for some reason I never wanted them. So who are your gut feeling no-nos?
For this year?
Yes.
Ooh.
I've got 2 of them.
Mike's talked about Devonta Freeman.
Yeah, Freeman
before.
is definitely on my no-no list where...
That's a very high-level no-no.
Yeah.
That's not a late-round no-no. That's an early-round no-no.
And when we're talking about no-no, guys, I completely admit I could be wrong on Freeman. I was very wrong last year. I think Coleman gets a lot more work this year, so I'm willing to be wrong. And he's on my no-no list of teams where it's just 98% chance he won't be drafted by me.
Yeah, I have Cam Newton's most likely on my no-no list this year, not because I project a bad season, but because I think there's no way I will ever get a value for Cam Newton coming off a year like the one he had. I would say Eddie Lacy and C.J. Anderson are still on my no-no list because I learn from the past as opposed to my counterparts.
He learns from 1 year of history as opposed to multiple years, which I believe was your defense of Andrew Luck.
Thank you, Mike. Go vote now for Eddie Lacy.
Eddie Lacy and C.J. Anderson have not had multiple years of elite play.
I disagree strongly on the Eddie Lacy comment.
He might have had to. He might have had to. All right. Do you got any no-nos in your head?
I don't know if it's a huge no-no. I would still take him, but I don't believe that much in Jarvis Landry. From where he's being drafted, he's probably going to be a no-no for me. I don't like T.J. Yeldon. I think the Chris Ivory thing scares me. I just don't know what his role is for where he's being drafted. And, I would say those are 2 guys that come to my mind.
All right, Lacy did have 2 years.
Yeah.
I'll give you that.
Thank you.
He's still a no-no to me because he can't say no-no to anything else.
No to a ho-ho.
Right.
And I'll probably it's piggybacking a little bit on Cam, but Kelvin Benjamin, where I think he will end up being drafted, will likely be on my no-no list.
All right, Joel.
No.
Yeah. Joel in Los Angeles, full point PPR, 2 keepers allowed. Who do I keep? Gurley for a 5, Jordy for a 13, or David Johnson for a 16?
Ooh.
Thanks, guys.
Ooh. This is the ultimate Gurley test for Andy.
Gurley is, he said 2 keepers allowed, so he needs 2.
Yep.
Ooh.
I would go Gurley and David Johnson.
Yeah, I would as well.
Even though it's full point PPR, I don't need to mess around with Jordy there. I'm taking Gurley in the 5th. That's beautiful.
I would take the values. I would take Johnson and Jordy.
Yeah, and I would go with Andy, Gurley, and David Johnson. You still got your first 4 picks, and you go in with 2 of the top 5
I can
running
honestly
backs.
see it both ways. I think it depends, honestly, about how do the other teams in your league break down position-wise with their keepers. That could make a very big impact on that decision. So the good news is you have 3 amazing keepers at great values. So that is it for today's show. We will be back on Thursday. Make sure you go to our Twitter page at the FF Ballers. Cast your vote for the presidential candidate and the rest of the members of our fantasy football government election show. I think we've made enough perfect political tie-ins and arguments.
Not enough fear-mongering, though.
Well,
we really did.
We kept it clean.
Yeah.
I will build a wall, and I'm going to keep Eddie Lacy out. So it's going to be thick.
I will say this. I think there was some surprise from the rest of you guys, as well as surprise of myself of how emphatic and passionate I got about Rashad Jennings.
You really did.
I didn't know that was coming.
You really did.
You know who's going to pay for that wall, Andy?
Uh-oh.
Sarah Lee.
Oh,
Sarah Lee's going to pay for that wall.
All right. Stay tuned for the show after the show on YouTube. Take
Goodbye.
care, guys.
Nobody knows.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter at the FF Ballers.